The Queens of Spice podcast is created for adult audiences only. Our show contains cursing, vulgar content, dark humor, descriptions of sexual acts and desires, and is not suitable for listeners under the age of 18. Some episodes also contain themes which may be triggering for listeners. Please take care of yourself. It's a deep crevice. Welcome to the Queens of Spice podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Raggy Ragged Shoe. I'm here with my two BFFs, Ash and Jack. Hi, guys.
Hi, Rachel. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Hi.
Have you stopped saying that you're a Pokemon master?
I just put Ragged Shoe at the end. I think people get it.
Okay.
I'm more of a host than a Pokemon master these days.
Well, I mean, she's a Pokemon and a Pokemon master. So what's she going to do, catch yourself?
Yes.
Yes.
Fair.
Just looking for love in all the wrong places. That's all.
In
You gotta
yourself.
Catch them all.
I'm working on the inside right now.
That's why she's trying to catch herself.
Yeah. So we're here with The League of Gentlewomen Witches by India Holton, published in 2022. Miss Charlotte Pettier belongs to the secret league of women skilled in the subtle arts. That is to say, although it must never be said, witchcraft. The League of Gentlewomen Witches strives to improve the world in small ways. Using magic, they tidy, correct, and manipulate according to their notions of what is proper, entirely unlike those reprobates in the Wisteria Society. When the long-lost amulet of Black Beryl is discovered, it is up to Charlotte, as the future leader of the League, to make sure that the powerful talisman does not fall into the wrong hands. Therefore, it is the most unfortunate when she crosses paths with Alex O'Reilly, a pirate who is no Mr. Darcy. With all of the world scrambling after the amulet, Alex and Charlotte must join forces to steal it together. If only they could keep their pickpocketing hands to themselves. If Alex is not careful, he might just steal something else, such as Charlotte's heart. Ooh. So welcome to the Dangerous Damsel series by India Holton. This is book 2. The first one is The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels, and the third book is The Secret Service of Tea and Treason. I picked this one specifically because it has witches, and it's October.
These are not witches.
Listen, please hold your commentary.
My notes say witches don't exist.
Exactly. Thank you, Jack. So the magic in this universe comes from a Latin incantation that Black Beryl discovered in like a bottle that washed up on a shore in an island somewhere. And basically the incantation kind of like became divisive. And one group of individuals who Charlotte is a descendant from, their last name is Plim. The Plymouth women have taken the incantation and used it as proper society ladies, as not witches, because witches don't exist. And the pirates...
That's what she means by that.
Yeah. So the pirates, however, took it and decided to fly houses around with it. So they definitely exist because they're flying houses around everywhere. Into this
Am I allowed to comment now?
Oh my gosh, you're so angry. She's such an angry elf.
She shushed me.
I shushed you. You gotta let me get it out, Ashton. I gotta tell people what's going on here before you have a fit about magic. Please proceed with your fit.
Now you're allowed to be mad.
Fit away, my dear.
Fit away.
I have allocated 3 minutes for your fit. Go.
No more. I specifically asked you when I read this book, is this the only magic in it? And you ignored me. And I was like, that's my answer. And I was so sour. So sour. Because I wanted because this is our Halloween episode.
It's a witchy episode.
It's supposed to be a Halloween episode. Close to
I
Halloween.
had
Close to Halloween.
I had a Halloween episode that was going to be Scream for me.
Right.
And we did not do that book for reasons.
But this is supposed to be like our Halloween-y episode. And it was just like, this was more Jane Austen than it was witches or Halloween or any kind of magical whatever. Like, yeah, it was delightful and it's like whimsical whatever, but like, where was the magic? Oh,
In our hearts.
We fly houses.
Those are pirates.
That's the other thing. That's a pirate. That's a witch. You're about the fucking same thing.
You have 1 minute and 40 seconds left.
I'm saving it for later because I'm still going to go off on a rant later.
I wanted you to make sure you know where you're at.
Judge, is she allowed to do that?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm definitely going to rant for more than a minute. You all know that. But anyway.
I'll give you 3 specifically.
You only have 3 minutes to say anything you want
I
to
was
say
giving
about
you
this
3
book.
because you're getting off the handle. I saw it in your eyes.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was staring at you because you shushed me. And I sat here like a fucking sullen dog.
You're so mad.
Just got blamed for peeing on the carpet when I didn't do it.
Told you she was a poodle.
I'm a Labrador Retriever.
Well, thanks, Ash.
Or a Mastiff, maybe. Big and dumb.
You are dumb.
Big Bernese Mountain Dog.
Don't call my friend dumb.
You are less than intelligent.
That's
Thanks.
acceptable.
Thank you.
No, that's mean too.
That's Plymouth is what that is. So this is like, Jane Austen. It's a very Jane Austen book. And it's historical romance,
Yes.
of course. It's enemies to lovers, obviously. There's like close proximity, and instead of only one bed, it's like technically only 2 beds, but one bed.
Oh, yeah, they push them together.
Yeah, they push them together because they're like, gasp, we're going to have to share this room together, and there's 2 beds. Damn it. Let's make them one bed so that it's only one bed. Because the book is, if nothing, it is incredibly self-aware, is how I'll say that. You're soulmate. She's such an angry elf.
I'm not. Okay, here's where my disappointment lies.
Mm-hmm.
If we had read this book for a different purpose, I probably would have liked it a lot more. But I went into this expecting like witchy shit, and I was disappointed, and therefore I have feelings.
Cool.
If we were like, hey, we should do like a historical romance that feels really Jane Austen-y, I'd be like, fuck yeah, this is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Why would anyone want that?
In fairness, like when you read the part that I'm going to get you to read, Jack, like the whimsy that is in this book, I think will settle into your heart.
Rachel's leaning heavily on it too because she really likes like the British feel of it.
I read this book, like the voice in my head reading this book was British, for sure.
The audiobook narrator was British too.
That makes sense. It's based like in London, like in reality, basically, and like outside of London. And it was
didn't
like
the flying houses.
What?
The flying houses. I didn't like it.
Okay, you don't have to. How did you feel about the flying popcorn stand?
I didn't like any of the flying anything.
That's disappointing.
The broom? Yeah, okay, I like the broom.
Broom didn't fly.
She flew on the broom.
She didn't fly on the broom.
Never
She
mind.
held onto the broom and it flew. There's a difference. And also, she doesn't exist because witches don't exist.
Oh my god.
So the whole, so the beginning of this book, they're sitting down to tea, and somebody bursts in. One of the the ladies of the society breaks in. She doesn't break in.
She rolls up.
So one of the ladies of the society rolls up, and she's like, yo, dog, they have this jewel is like on display. And Black Beryl's stuff is there, and there's like, we gotta go to the museum and check it out because her amulet's there, and her amulet belongs to the chosen one.
Check.
Check. Yo, dog, what is up? We're here for Black Beryl's amulet, so we're gonna go to the museum and fucking rob it. Dog.
Oh, amazing.
Jacqueline, you're the rapper. Can't you do something better?
I don't know the book well enough.
Are you saying that wasn't good? Ouch. That cuts me deep, Ash.
I'm just saying that.
Cut me real deep.
You called me dumb!
Guys, my friends are fighting and I don't know what to do.
Mom and Dad are fighting again.
We do have mom and dad energy, don't we? So, obviously, Charlotte has to go steal this amulet because as the rightful heir to Black Beryl's legacy, she should be in possession of it because it has immense power and it gifts witches immense power.
To float things. That is the only power there is. They float things.
I'm taking that off your 3 minutes. She ends up like going to this exhibit several times, and over her like kind of traversing there several times, she comes back in contact with Alex O'Reilly, whom at the very beginning of the book she like has a confrontation with, where she's sitting in a cafe, and there's like a man at the front cash basically yelling at a barista who's and just being a right arsehole to everybody. And this is like modern, or this is like English society, so like it's don't cause a scene. That's so like what a ruckus. And so she flings a book at him and then blames the guy sitting beside her. And the guy sitting beside her happens to be Alex O'Reilly. And so they have a bit of a thing. And then she takes his briefcase and leaves. And obviously stealing it. While this other guy is like yelling at Alex because he's like, you threw a book at me, you sir, you scoundrel. And he's like, what are you on about? And just ignoring him. So she takes off. He chases her. There's a big scene involving pumpkins. And then she jumps on a bike and gets away. But she flies the bike over houses.
Floating. Flying.
Yeah.
All of the things.
Yeah. But she also knocked over the carriage and triggered the horses to like lose their minds and go out of the way by using telekinesis is how I'll phrase that.
She floated shit.
Yeah. So she
it's floating shit.
So
sour.
I think I'm going to back Ashton on this one and say that literally anything can make horses just fucking lose their shit. Like,
I love how that's you're
fair.
backing.
If you just like yell at a horse real loud, they'll like lose their shit.
So I don't know that magic was like super related to the horses, but
anyway,
the only magic that there is floating shit.
So this ends a little tough. So as she's trying to like obtain this amulet, the pirates of the Wisteria Society are also kind of there. And she actually meets, from the first book, Cecilia Bassingthwaighte. Bassingthwaighte. That's a hard one to pronounce. And her husband, Ned. And, yes, Jack, you have a question.
Does she know what's in the briefcase she stole?
Yeah, it's shredded paper. There's nothing in it.
So why'd she fucking steal it?
Because she thought there was something in it.
Okay, so she didn't know at the time what was in
Correct.
it. Okay.
She also didn't know he was a pirate at the time.
So she's just a petty thief?
Mm-hmm.
They all are.
Oh, yeah. So all of the witches, so all the not witches, because they don't exist, and all of the pirates are like just thieves. They steal shit constantly. That's their only thing.
They have a big rivalry, and yet they're the exact same.
It's very funny to me, too, because there's a big theme in this book specifically that's like, they've always been rivals. They have to continue that rivalry because it's one of the few things that drives them. Otherwise, they're like, well, what's the point? They can't be friends with pirates because they're pirates. And the pirates are like, we can't be friends with witches because they don't exist.
It's very much like a Valley Girl thing where, you know, they don't like each other because that would be ludicrous, but they're the exact same fucking thing. But they can't be friends because they're Valley Girls and they can't, you know.
The whole thing stems back to Black Beryl when they like, because the leader of the witches originally had Black Beryl executed. So that is where the division happened. And then again, the peer pressure from dead people, this just continued down the lines for a number of years of like, it just, the kind of the vast crevice just like grew and grew and grew between the two of them. And then it just like never got better.
Yeah, look how deep that thing is.
It's a deep crevice. So crevasse. So there's this big like battle thing that kind of happens when Cecilia finally goes and steals the amulet, where like, you know, the pirates have it and then the witches have it and the pirates have it and the witches have it, and then Tom, who is, what's her name, Constantinople
Brown.
Yeah. Her fiance Tom has the amulet in his hand, and she's like, run, Tom! And he runs down the steps. He runs directly into Lady Armitage's house, and then the house takes off because they fly. Every time I bring up magic now, you're just gonna like groan at me.
I didn't say anything.
I didn't say anything. I saw the look in your eye.
I didn't say it.
So off they go with the amulet, and then of course they're like, their houses give chase, and
exactly.
It's absurd, and I love it. Okay. The other houses give chase.
And then Ned is bicycling along behind, floating through the air.
And so they're firing cannons at each other and shit, and it's like a whole thing. And there's like this big pirate chase, and Lady Armitage like basically gets away. But in the meantime, Charlotte kind of commandeered Alex's house, for lack of a better term. She came in and made herself at home, and she was basically like, well, you're going to chase her down, so like I'm going with you, obviously. And he's like, you're not. And she's like, what are you gonna fucking do about it? I'm paraphrasing because she would never curse because she's a lady. So obviously they get in a big tiff, and she like kind of beats the crap out of him to some degree, but then he gets back at her, and there's a whole to do. And then they're chasing down Armitage, and then because of their fight, they have to like land the house for whatever reason, and they kind of get like separated from the group that was chasing Armitage down.
They have to land the house.
They don't land the house. They,
Isn't there like, aren't they trying to put like a grenade in her chimney?
that's later. That sounds like a euphemism. No, that's down the road. I'm gonna get there. So
No, fuck on. You get better results.
so
Quick, land the house.
Jack, I can't express how like fun this book is. I fucking love it. Everything about it's wonderful. There's flying houses, and it's just ridiculous. At one point, Charlotte like gets her aunt off her case by telling her aunt that there's like this new orphanage that opened, and she likes to one up some of the other people in the group by donating more money to things.
The chick with the stuffed dog.
Yeah, what's her Glotenberry? She has a stuffed dog, a taxidermy dog, and like they always one up each other with like donations to things. And so she's like, "But Auntie, there's this new orphanage that opened. You have to go donate money to it." She's like, "I'll be there at once," and then leaves. Anyways.
I also thought it was really funny that they're going on about how like garish it is that Cecilia Bassingthwaighte has ginger hair, and then like
it's strawberry blonde.
Like, well, here we are.
Charlotte
has red hair too. And she's like, it's strawberry blonde. It's
yes, completely different. Even though
not
well, and even though I think it was Glotenberry who actually
I think it's Gluffinberry.
Is it Gluffinberry? You listened to the audiobook, right?
I'm pretty sure it was Gluffinberry.
Okay.
Gluffinberry.
So Gluffinberry with her stuffed poodle. Poodle with stuffed poodle. She of course mistook her.
Jesus fuck.
For
Oh my fucking god.
What's happening here?
I don't know.
She mistook her for Cecilia Bassingthwaighte, which anyway, because they have the exact same hair. She's like, "Yeah, that was her flying the bike, that terrible pirate." And she's like, "Yeah, it was her, all right. It definitely wasn't me." So they end up off the beaten path, and Charlotte proposes that they think smarter, not harder. And so they try to figure out where Armitage would be going. And so they come up with this plan that she would be going to this very specific part of, it's like a small town, like on the coast. And so they head in that direction. And as they're heading in that direction, they're getting chased by another house. That's another pirate. And
Run away from that house.
So this is where he has the plan to like whiff a smoke grenade down their chimney to like get rid of them. And so he goes up on the roof, and then Charlotte goes up on the roof to like use her magic abilities to like move him safely across the other room.
To levitate and float shit.
Sure. Over across to the other house. And so he's got his grenade. She's up on the roof.
Wait, who's driving the house?
Oh, the butler. Sorry. The butler, his name is Bixby. He's actually younger.
Daniel Bixby.
He's younger than Alex. Did you catch that? He's like this very prim and proper butler. Oh, this is a great time to mention. All the butlers in this have like a network where they share information.
The third book's about the butler.
Wonderful. So they basically share this network of information amongst all the other butlers. So like they always have this like information valley going on of like, oh my God, we need to find out where so-and-so is. And then like call the butlers because the butlers know what's up. And so Bixby has like a dossier on like everyone in this book, including Alex and including Charlotte. So they all know each other.
I would hope so. Who is this random person? I don't know. Quick, ask the butler.
Yeah, dead ass the butler knows. So Bixby's driving, Jack. And
driving the house.
Yeah, he's driving the house. He's got a wheel, like they spin the wheel around. They have a sextant to
Should it be flying the house, driving the house?
You know me and driving. Everything gets driven.
Roll up in the house.
Just roll up and drive away. She floats him across over to the other house. He whiffs the grenade into the house and then floats him back. And then while this is happening, this is like kind of an overarching
down the chimney.
Down the chimney. Okay. So this is kind of an overarching theme in this book.
Has the chimney been cleaned out that year?
No. Probably.
It will be in a minute.
Yeah, because I should mention that Alex's house is like disgusting.
Okay.
He's Irish. It's a little Irish cottage, and it's filthy. And they always want him to paint his like shutters, and he refuses to do any work
because he's a man.
And like when Charlotte is sitting in his home, she's like, this is disgusting. Can I please get rid of the cobwebs? God, why? You have a butler, but you refuse to let him clean because she's like, that's a waste of his time. Meh, meh, meh.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a thing. So the theme is that she lives in this very, like, so she's going to take over the League. She's a very sheltered person. She's like kind of been under the tutelage of her aunt for many, many years. She's kind of like kept away from the scenes of everything, and she has like no friends. So just really no, it's dead ass. Like she even says like, yeah, I don't have any friends. Like she has her aunt and her mother. Those are the only people she sees.
This is a theme for you too. The last book was like, I'm really sheltered. I don't know what coming is. I only have my friend Derby, who I have to marry, but he's gay. Like
the theme is cool. I mean, the feel is different, I would say.
Rachel's like, I felt very isolated as a human, and I'm gonna read books about people who are isolated because that makes me feel happy.
But then they're like,
does
they have
she
magic.
need pirate semen in order to live? Pirate semen makes the house fly. Come on, little butler. Bump.
That would be obscene in this book, and I love that visual. Thank you, Jack.
I just picture instead of like Tinkerbell's pixie dust, just a guy coming over everybody.
Right?
Just having a wank.
Just like on top of the roof, like little sprinkles.
I was scrolling through TikTok the other day and I came across a video of a guy standing over a bunch of girls just fucking coming on them. And I was like, oh, right, I forgot. It was Bless a House. Porn for women by women. And I forgot that I followed them. So every once in a while these things come up. And that's what it made me think of. It's just this guy coming all over all these chicks. Only a house.
Only it's a house.
Only it's
so the group of chicks are a house.
This is not what happens on my TikTok. Like, I see people making stickers,
Twitter,
and earrings.
Twitter, dude. Twitter, not TikTok.
Oh.
What's Twitter?
Oh, is
I'm
that
not
like...
calling it what it's called now, and he can go fuck himself.
He would probably enjoy that. I'm not gonna lie. He's a guy.
It still says Twitter on my phone. I'm calling it Twitter.
Fair.
Coming on houses. All right.
Whew. Okay, coming on houses. They basically, she has this moment on the roof where she's like, she's been like, this is her freedom. She's standing on the roof in the wind. Like the wind's going through her hair. She's wearing pants, which is a point because they always wear fucking dresses and she hates it.
She's wearing pants.
She's wearing pants, trousers, proper thing.
I like pants.
I also enjoy pants. They're having this moment where she's like, God, I'm free and like I could do whatever and like this is incredible and it's so different than what she grew up with. And then they fall off the house.
Do you know what I'm imagining?
What's up?
Like Jack and Rose on the Titanic.
Exactly. Yes.
But on the roof.
Exactly that. Except it's a house. And then Jacqueline. So picture this. They're on a house. They're doing the Jack thing. And then another house, like with the smoke in them, careens and smokes them. And then they fall off.
Oh.
But instead of falling into the ocean, she uses her magic to like slow them down.
To float them down.
To slow them down so they don't. But then she like ends up at the end getting distracted and gets in the lake anyway. And so she's like soaked and he's soaked and they swim to the lake. And they're having like a moment where they start making out, obviously, because at this point she's just like,
yeah, when you fall off houses, that's exactly what you do.
Well, they were making out on the roof too. That was another reason that she wasn't paying attention.
All I like in my head, all I can hear right now is the fucking "You Can Fly," like the think of the magical things from fucking Peter Pan.
Oh, Peter Pan.
You can fly, you can fly, we can fly, you can fly. That's what I have in my head.
I could
right
sing. So
What?
What?
What's that from?
Something else.
Obviously. Very good.
So
Moving on.
Moving on. So they crawl out of the lake and start like macking on each other, of course. And then there's a man that like clears his voice nearby, and they're like, "What the fuck?"
Fishing guy.
So there's a fishing guy. He is
also
also
a
a butler. And so he's part of the Butler Network. And so he's got some information. He points them towards a local pub, a public house that's nearby that they can stay at and dry out, whatever. And this is where the only 2 beds comes in.
The Butler Network.
The Butler
only
Network.
2 beds.
Yeah, so this is where they walk it, like, you know, obviously you have to pretend to be a married couple because, like, oh my God, scandalous. And so... Scandalous. So they end up in this place. It has 2 beds. They push the beds together because now there's, like, only 1 bed. And then they decide that they're so stressed out that they need to, like, just get the tension out. Because they're like, there's too much tension between us. All this tension's crazy. Let's just get the tension out and do it. And so they do it. This is another instance where she's like, what's doing it? She like doesn't really know about sex a whole lot because again, she like her point of reference is like literary novels, especially like Jane Austen type novels. And so like there's no point of reference for like copulating as a man and a woman really, but she's really good at like speaking and flirting and stuff.
She's good at the words.
She's good with the words, but she's not good with the penis and the V. So
I'm the opposite.
Isn't that the man's job anyway?
and Alex is well versed. Also, that is the era that we're talking about. Yes, it's like the 1870s or something.
That was oddly specific.
I'm not even. They call out the year. I'm pretty sure it was like 1870s.
No.
Of all the things, right?
Of all the things.
I don't know why that stuck in my head.
Oh, that's like the last 20 or so years when houses flew.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they stopped flying
Before
after
they
that.
stopped flying.
Yeah, because I mean, we'll talk about the resolution.
I think it had to do with the Titanic. Yeah.
It was in 1919.
1912.
1912. Fair.
You were obsessed, weren't you, with that movie?
It's not only that, but I was really big into Downton Abbey, and Downton Abbey starts with like that's one of like the big thing that happens in the very first episode is the Titanic sinks because one of the family members who was supposed to inherit Downton was on the Titanic. So they're like, "Oh, who's going to inherit Downton Abbey now?" And I'm fairly certain it was 1912.
Makes sense.
What the fuck is Downton?
Downton Abbey.
But like, what is that?
It's a TV show.
Well, no, but like on the TV show, what is Downton? What's an abbey?
It's a house. It's their home. It's called Downton Abbey.
An abbey
Where
traditionally-
nuns live?
I was gonna say an abbey traditionally is like an estate that is owned by
it's
the
an
church.
estate.
Okay.
But
So
like,
why
why
is
is
someone-
that's not owned by this church anymore?
But why is
Yeah.
someone inheriting it then?
Because the Grantham family only had 3 daughters, and so because of the time, it can't be inherited by one of the daughters. It has to be inherited by a male member. And the oldest daughter was supposed to marry the guy who was inheriting, who was a cousin, and he died on the Titanic. So they're now like, shit, who's going to inherit it now? Insert new cousin.
Oh no, a woman can't take it because it's 1912 and we're fucking patriarch. What?
So it doesn't just keep going with the church?
No, sorry. This would have been relinquished by the church. It's just called an abbey because of like the
structure.
style and structure and everything of the house. Yeah.
It's a good show.
You know what? I've always been meaning to watch it. I just like haven't.
If
gotten
you
there.
like this book, minus the magic, it's a good show.
Cool.
Also, Dame Maggie Smith is in it,
Mhm.
and like if I could be her when I'm older as Violet, whatever her name is, like that's goals.
Goals.
Like you would love her. You would love the show just for her,
Nice.
hands down.
I will put that on my repertoire.
On your repertoire,
On my repertoire. So they do the deed,
and
as
then
it were.
and then the beds fall apart.
So they fall through the beds and they keep doing it and whatever. It's a whole thing. Jack's gonna read about it. And then so the next morning after they do it a couple more times, obviously there's a knock on the door and they're trying to discuss what they're going to do next and like coming up with a plan and all this stuff. And he's like, "Well, we'll find the house first." And she's like, "Yeah, but like, where is the house? Because like who knows where they landed?" And he's like, "Don't worry about it." And she's like, "What do you mean?" And there's a knock at the door and there's his fucking butler, Bixby.
Hello, Bixby.
He's like, "I'm here. Here's your morning newspaper, and also on the newspaper it says that you might have kidnapped Charlotte. So there's that."
Oh, that becomes the whole thing, whether he kidnapped her or she kidnapped
Yeah,
him.
and I mean, like, obviously, so the League actually put out the notion that she was kidnapped by him to protect her reputation. But then, of course, the League also knows that, no, she probably kidnapped him because, let's be honest, it's Charlotte. And she kidnaps people, apparently.
And she's a big hoe bag.
No, she's just very strong.
Oh.
That's how they phrase it.
Well, and it's also like to make her seem like because she's supposed to be the leader of the whatever in the end, so they want her to seem like she can handle this. She can handle herself. That's how definitely. So,
But they need to protect her reputation, so he has to be be to have kidnapped her because
Reputation.
of proprietary.
They kidnapped each other,
They did. They kidnapped each other's hearts.
and then they played hide the sausage.
They did. And so Bixby rolls up and he's like, sir, and then hands him the newspaper and then he's like, oh shit.
Sir.
And then there's another knock on the door and that's the police, obviously. So they get the fuck out of there.
Quick to the house.
To the house. I should
Did
mention too.
Bixby bring their house back?
Yeah, it's parked.
like
It's parked down
outside
the road.
house.
Yeah,
All right.
It's like in the hallway, just right there. Just landed it.
just little.
I don't know if you're joking or not.
No,
Because
it's down the way. They had to park it like in a
In the
lot.
first one, there was an abbey, and they were landing the houses on the abbey.
on top of it. Yeah, it was wild. That was
yeah, exactly, Jacqueline. Exactly.
It was a big ass abbey too. It was fucking massive.
Yep.
Yeah, the garden was big enough to plant all the houses in.
Yeah.
So this is where I should mention. Do you remember? Is it Creevy? Is that it? How to pronounce his name? He's the witch
Yeah.
hunter.
Colin Creevy, Dennis.
I don't know what his first name is.
Those are people from Harry Potter.
Oh, right, fair.
Yeah,
just
Inspector Creevy.
Detective Inspector Creevy. He's a witch hunter, and he's kind of on her heels as well. He does that weird thing where he like smells,
Sniffs things.
and he can smell magic, but he specifically goes after witches, not pirates, because witches don't exist. He comes up later too. We'll talk about that. And at the end of the book, this is the whole
Sounds
thing.
like something Filch would do in Harry Potter.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
A
This
little,
is nice.
a little more capable than Filch for sure, but thereabouts.
Jesus Christ.
So they take off, and they get back in the house, and they like
Take off again.
they take off again in the merry way in their house.
Levitating.
Yep, and they pick Bixby up, and then away they go. So they go to this town on the sea, and they park the house in the middle of the fucking dock, which is really funny to me. This is an ongoing theme too. Pirates just put their houses wherever, and
and
everyone
the-
just accepts it.
And they're like, yeah, well, we know it's a pirate house because it's in the middle of the road.
Yes.
It is in the most inconvenient place possible. It is obviously a pirate house.
So the best way to hide a pirate house is to like pretend that it's a house. So they're going after Armitage, and Armitage has parked her house in that it looks like a house.
But she has a red door.
She has a red door. So everyone is looking for this red door. So in the meantime, while this like rendezvous is happening with Alex and Charlotte, pelvically, her aunt Judith Plim and the rest of the league are Judith Plim. She's with
Glofenberry?
Glofenberry, and there's a couple other ones like Mrs. Chook and her maid Dearlove. They are teaming up. They have form a treaty with the pirates because the pirates have the houses that will transport them to the places, and they all want the amulet. So they're working together, and they're having a temporary treaty between their feud in order to work together to do this and to bring Charlotte home in this town where everyone kind of figured out at the same time that this is where Armitage would be going because it's like her vacation area or whatever. They
saw the red door.
They saw the red door. They're like, there it goes. They all kind of converge in this town. She and Alex are trying to find the house, and then the aunt is trying to take her home and like stop the pirate, and like the other pirates are being like trying to stop them from being together too, but they're kind of not, especially Cecilia and Ned. They're just like, darn, we caught you, and then you got away somehow. Oh no, that would be really sad since you're so in love. And so it's kind of ironic in that regard.
But then Cecilia's aunt is also stalking them down because Cecilia's pregnant, and she's all like,
oh my god, yeah. What's Cecilia aunt's name? I can't remember off the top of my head. It doesn't matter. So yeah, but Cecilia's aunt from the first book specifically. She's like so overbearing, and I love it.
yeah, she's always worried about being sick.
Oh my god, and she's like, put on an extra scarf, you'll get laryngitis, and it's just like obscenely.
Yeah.
Like,
You'll get laryngitis.
Yeah,
That's how you get syphilis.
yeah, like just the most weirdest shit because she's so overprotective of her, and it's wonderful.
Yeah, so she's like, we must get her because she's not wearing her coat because she's pregnant, and we must take care of her.
It's a whole thing. It ends up that Plim, Mrs. Plim, Miss Plim, M-I-S-S.
Ms.
She's never been married. She's against it, as a matter of fact. And the fact that Charlotte is like with a man, she's like, no, there's no way she's ever gonna get married. In the meantime, her mother, Pettifer, Mrs. Pettifer, is like, oh, I'm already planning the wedding. As soon as she finds out that like they're together and like off doing things, she's like, I'm planning the wedding.
And then her dad's like, I can't even remember her
my
name.
God, what's her name? Her dad is the worst.
Yeah.
He's such a terrible fucking human. Anyway,
Can't even remember his daughter's name.
Yeah.
yeah, it's like a joke.
what's
It's
her
like,
name
what's her
again?
name again? It's like Charlotte, your daughter. Anyway,
All he wants to do is plow his wife.
that's literally all he wants,
Yep.
and she's into that. That's fine.
Yep.
Good for them.
Yeah, they're still keeping it fresh. Over all the
Hello,
years.
Fresh.
Hello Fresh. So
Our
there's
sponsor this week.
not a sponsor. So there's like a showdown in this town amongst like the pirates and the witches, but it's the pirate and the witches group versus Alex and Charlotte. And so they're all trying to find the house, but they're all trying to stop Alex and Charlotte. And Alex and Charlotte end up finding the house because they're walking down the road. It's supposed to be on Anchor Road. They're walking down this road and they're like having a spat about something, and they hear somebody be like, excuse me. And then they keep talking and having a spat. And they're like, excuse me, a little bit louder. And they keep talking. And she's like, excuse me. And they finally stop and turn around. And it's Armitage hanging out of her door being like, are you looking for me? Because this is how the book is written.
Also, it should be mentioned that they want the amulet, but it's also like, oh, and we should probably save Tom.
Oh, yeah. You have to save Tom, too.
Because Armitage has a habit of
She's
forcing men to marry her.
I will say in the beginning of the books, there's a list of characters in order of appearance, and so then there's a brief description beside all of them of kind of their like main characteristics, and the description after Lady Armitage is a persistent nemesis and matrimoniaphile is how they phrase it, because she's obsessed with being married
and marrying people against their will.
And then killing them and or divorcing them. Usually it's killing, I think. They all died under mysterious circumstances.
Oh, Black Widow.
Definitely.
Praying mantis.
I will say too, for how much like bad stuff in this book, I don't think anyone ever actually dies in any of the books.
It's like mentioned as an afterthought more so.
But even still, because in the first book, spoilers, in the first book, her father dies. Like Cecilia's, her father dies, but then he doesn't because he comes back at the end. And then they chain him up and put him in the dungeon. Like nobody dies.
I thought he was cannibalized. I don't know.
Her father?
I don't know.
It's fascinating. Where did you get that?
I don't know.
No, he was thrown in the dungeon of the royal palace.
I can't remember.
Because they were at the Jubilee for the Queen.
Ashton was probably just trying to make it more exciting for herself.
Amazing. What kind of fever dream was that? Okay, good.
That's like my life. What kind of fever
I know.
dream was
That
that?
was fascinating. I'm just like, how did you even get there? I don't remember cannibals in either book. Anyway.
I know where the cannibals came from.
We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll just leave it.
So they have this.
Only you two are happy to just leave it there.
Yeah, just leave it there.
It'll come back later.
She'll remember. So they have a spat with Armitage, obviously. They end up.
And there's a vicar.
Oh yes, they're right, because she had to go hijack a vicar. Oh, and she burned the church down using the amulet.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she stole this vicar in order to marry her and Tom, like Armitage and Tom. And then when Alex and Charlotte, like, they have this big fight and Armitage captures them. And this is where we find out too that Mrs. Chooks, her maid, Mrs. Dearlove, is a turned traitor. And so she like ends up capturing these two basically and throws them in the dungeon, which every house has a dungeon, of course. All the pirate houses.
Yeah, why not?
But in Alex's, it's just filled with like potatoes or something or sugar.
Jack, your house is a dungeon too.
It kind of does actually.
How does that work when they're flying?
It's just the basement. It's all connected.
So when it lands, does it dig its own hole?
No, usually it just sits on top. And so like,
So it's
when,
like a giant
when
cinder block.
Armitage stuck her head out the door, and this is another one, I'm like, how did you not know? Armitage stuck her head out the door, like she's several feet off the ground when she did that. And it's like, that should have been your indication that was the house with the red door, but whatever. It's
Right.
fine.
Also, if you don't want Rachel to move, you should probably get your dungeon situated for her.
I don't know if that's going to help at this point. I've already made commitments. I'm sorry. I can't commit to a dungeon and an apartment in Montreal. I can't do both.
I can pull some strings.
I mean, if you want to pay my rent, then that's okay. They have a spat. They get thrown in the dungeon. In the meantime, so they end up getting out of the dungeon because somebody lets them out. And they go up to the cockpit of the house. And they find Dearlove
Taking it apart.
taking apart the steering apparatus,
The
like
wheel.
sabotaging it. And they're like, what the fuck? She's like, I'm actually a turncoat. I'm actually one of the investigators that works under the ground. So she's like triple crossing almost everybody. And then she like kind of walks off into the sunset and you'd never see her again.
This is like the slapstick, like...
Very much so. Like there's so many layers of what's going on, and you're like, what is
she
going?
inherits Downton Abbey,
Yeah.
and off we go.
She can't. She's not a man.
She's not a man. I was
Isn't
gonna say,
she though?
who knows? I don't know.
I don't know.
So then they have another spat with Armitage, and the house kind of takes off, and it's like semi-flying. It's a whole thing, and they have this really big, like, intense fight scene, and like stuff catches on fire, and like she almost marries Tom. She basically marries Tom, but like he didn't say yes, but like it
But
was
they
under
can't-
duress.
But also, don't tell Oakley that.
Oh my God,
Tom
don't
may
tell
or may
Oakley.
not be married already.
because like they're engaged, and she's intense.
Yeah. In the
she's-
beginning, she's like, she has him convinced that she's 19, and everybody's like, "You're not 19."
You're not
and he's
19.
like, "What?"
Excuse me.
She's like, "Whatever." And he's like, "Now I have to marry you because you're 16."
Yes, it's a whole thing.
Best friends with the queen.
Obviously, she's best friends with the queen. Yeah.
Me too.
So then there's a big. everyone kind of becomes present. Like all of the witches and the pirates like all gather around. The house is like on fire. And like there's this big fight going on with Armitage and Alex. And like Charlotte was getting Tom and the vicar out. And so she's down on the ground watching this fire happen and like watching Alex in this fight with Armitage, and she's like, oh shit, like he's gonna fall out the window, and he's like holding on for dear life, and then he starts falling. But in the meantime, fucking Detective Inspector Creevy is standing beside her being like, I know you're a fucking witch, and she's like, bullshit, eat my dick. And then and then Alex starts falling out of the window, and she's like, oh no, and she incants to like save him, stop him from falling,
to float.
and then Creevy,
Oh, but she fucked up in front of Creevy.
so Creevy immediately slaps her in fucking irons and chucks her off. However, if you remember, now that she has freed Tom, Oakley Brown is just like, don't think so, I owe you, and gets her the fuck out of that, and like knocks Creevy out and all this stuff.
And then Creevy marries her aunt.
Oh man. Well, okay, spoilers, but it doesn't say that in this book that they get married. I assume they do, but that's not.
They sniffed each other a
They
whole
just
bunch.
it was weird. It was weird. Anyway, so they get free. And obviously, like, here's your happy ever after. They're going to go off and get married and love each other and all this stuff. And the best.
Real hard.
Well, and one of my favorite parts of this book is right at the end when they're sitting around having tea at her mother's house. This is when she gets to her aunt was waiting at her mother's house for Charlotte to come back, because she's going to like ream her out basically and be like, you can't do this. You have integrity and all this stuff, and like gonna give her, you know,
because her aunt like rolled
read her
up
the
and
riot.
was like, I'm gonna read you the riot act.
Yeah, and she's like, I will see you at home, and she's like, I gotta go home, I guess. She goes home, and so while her aunt is waiting for her, Creevy knocks on the door because he's like, I'm here to arrest Charlotte because she a fucking witch, and she's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Witches aren't real.
Because witches aren't real. And then they like have this moment
Where they sniff each other.
where they sniff each other, and then her aunt like goes off with Creevy. I guess.
I didn't understand that part.
Into the sunset. It was like an insta-lust thing. I was like, what is going on here? It's very odd.
Yeah, but like he's gonna murder you.
He's
and
a witch hunter.
He's a witch hunter, and you're like.
But that's like the enemies to lovers trope again, where it's like, are they gonna like go off and be lovers now? Like, it's very odd.
I don't understand.
She changed him.
Maybe, but like instantly. It was very weird.
Yeah.
Like
Not a
there's
good
some
vibe.
other. It was such a weird. It was weird. It was a
vibe.
very weird way to
What,
end it.
you've never sniffed a detective inspector before? That's how it happens.
I don't think I have. I can't say I've ever talked to a detective inspector.
I mean,
I avoid the cops at all costs because ACAB.
I'm not saying that I sniff them or I don't sniff them, but like, if somebody smells good, I'm gonna be aware of it. 'Cause
You
I'm
weren't-
standing next to
So
them
what you're
with my
saying
hands
is
on them.
you don't know if they were a detective inspector.
Oh, I generally know what people do.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I just don't like go out of my way to sniff them. I just, if somebody smells good, it's kind of hard to disguise whether or not you smell good or bad if you're like wearing some nice smelling stuff.
Totally fine.
Because like they're there and my hands are on them, and like sometimes
You can't help it. I get it.
Sometimes my hands smell like that when I'm done.
Yeah, and then you gotta sniff them.
And sometimes I have to get my nose real close just to make sure I'm getting those knots out real good.
Jesus.
Oh, listen, there's sometimes like just, anyway.
Don't tell on yourself, Ash. It's okay.
what you're saying.
I can't speak to what Creevy smells like, honestly, because they didn't really describe it in this book because it wasn't written first person perspective. So
based
there's no,
on
like-
his description, I would say glue.
I would say mushrooms at the best.
Glue and mushrooms together.
Mushroom glue.
Elmer glue and mushrooms.
Yeah.
Mushrooms covered in Elmer's glue.
Yeah, that's what he smells like.
and
Let's assume that.
And sparkles.
Oh, I would fucking leave with them too.
Anyway, so
Preschool teacher's dream.
so Miss Plim leaves a note behind, basically like I left. I'm leaving the society in Charlotte's hands, and I'm out of here. Peace. So.
Bye.
So Charlotte, so Charlotte rolls up, and her mom is there, and Alex. She brings Alex, and they're sitting there having a conversation. And
Does her dad remember her?
Jesus, don't get me
I
started.
don't think her dad's there.
He like goes upstairs. She's like,
Yeah.
I'm not dealing with this shit. Bye.
Which
as
I
he's
mean,
wont to do.
admittedly is like very male for the generation.
Yeah, for 1870s especially. So
Because we know so much about then.
obviously. So as Charlotte is sitting with her mother, she's kind of like, you know, like, oh shit, I'm in charge of the Elite now. I can like make real change happen, and we can like make some real waves with the society, and that like we can help a lot of people and like change the way we do things and like distribute money and all these things. And then as like a bunch of the League people come in and they're like having an impromptu meeting, and she's telling them her ideas, and they're like,
No, we don't do that.
We don't need to change. Everything's fine. And then Alex gets the vibe that he's like, well, I guess since everything's perfectly fine now, we're all friends, I better kidnap Charlotte and leave so that our dispute with the pirates and witches can go back to normal again.
And her
then
mother's
he
like,
does.
but you'll come back and let me plan the wedding, right? Like, I'll plan
And she's
the
like, we're having a
wedding."
fall wedding, yes? Like, it's a whole... And so obviously, like, very cheeky, he, like, carries her over her shoulder, but like, we're leaving. And then she goes and packs, and then she, like, picks up her stuff, and then, like, all of her books. And he's like, how many books do you have? And then they go off together and get married.
Because bitches like libraries.
Yeah, this is the thing. Both of these books are very heavy on the, like, bibliophile kind of heroines.
Both female characters have a connection to a, like, famous author. So this one was Jane Austen, and the one before it was Byron,
Yeah.
I think.
Well, Byron was a poet?
Yeah, and they were like, he was related to him, or there was something to do with that. Anyway.
Yeah.
He
was related to him. Yeah,
so
anyways,
I'd be
it's very
interested
funny.
to see if, like,
If the next one is...
FMC and the next one has some kind of, like, connection to some historical
Wouldn't
author.
surprise me. Because, like, India Holton, especially, like, the vibe is, like, she's into historical romance. That's her whole jam. So that definitely comes through. But that's, like, the summation of it. The like, ending epilogue stuff is mostly Tom and Opley's wedding, which, like, they had... I think the musicians and stuff were being held at, like...
Yeah.
And the Vicar shows back up to, like, perform the wedding, and he's, like, in chains and stuff and can't leave the island. And it's a nice cheeky little ending to the whole thing. And so...
You say cheeky, and I think underwear.
Oh, yeah, fair. I bought some cheeky underwear the other day at Torrid. I love Torrid. So, and also not a sponsor. But that's basically the wrap of the entire summation of the book. Jack, I'm going to get you to read...
And no other spells were used.
a thing. Because Ashton has no time left to complain about magic.
Oh, no, thank you. Charlotte had a talent for certainty, and one thing she was very sure about was that she didn't approve of what they were doing. She liked it. In fact, she would happily continue doing it for the rest of the evening, if required. And furthermore, take it up the next morning should the opportunity arise. But approval was a different matter entirely. Captain O'Reilly had touched her in a way that was certainly unhygienic, and goodness only knows what kind of nervous damage she had acquired when that strange, powerful sensation of bliss overtook her. There was also still the fact of the amulet being unsecured. Then Alex stroked a hand over her breast, causing all thought of the amulet to explode in a golden blaze. And now the blasted man was kissing her again. Worse, his gentleness completely ruined the happy image she had of him as a cur. She had been expecting a brief, furious event, such as their arguments had been. But instead he gave her this tenderness, this inexplicable consideration. Thankfully, she had last cobbled together somewhat of a script for response. Mr. Darcy also had proved himself a considerate fellow beneath his aloof exterior, and Elizabeth Bennet had reacted with sincerity and love. Charlotte thought this rather extreme, but she could at least kiss the pirate's jaw, enjoying the texture of stubble against her tingling lips, following the hard curve up to his earlobe, that she bit gently, his earring clattering against her chin. How the fuck are you supposed to read that? He said, which was possibly an Irish word. It seemed to express approval. You're welcome, she whispered into his ear. He shivered. Wicked witch, he said, and Charlotte remembered. Yes, that's what she was. Casting aside her nice script, she drew a fingernail along the tattoo of barbed knots that swooped across his chest, then down, over his heart, around his navel, into the dark hair at the base of his, fifth and definitely not small limb. His breath hitched, and Charlotte smirked with satisfaction. She had a fair idea now of what he intended to do with that particular part of his anatomy, and she stroked a cautious finger along the blushed, velvety skin. Within seconds, He had her flipped onto her back, legs pushed open, knees up, breath gone. He lay over her, and his eyes blazed with a feral heat. Charlotte grinned. I dare you. Are you sure? I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. Very well then. His hand moved down to where it had been so effective before, and she gasped as sensation rampaged through her. She tried to think of a response, but suddenly something else was there. Pressing hard, and her body tensed, sensing a moment from which there would be no going back. Her heart thundered in trepidation. Then the world literally caved in. Alex blinked with confusion as they dropped a depth of 2 feet to an abrupt, although rather soft landing. Moments later, he realized the beds had slid apart and they'd fallen through the gap to the carpet below. A tangled sheet lay beneath them. The eider-down stretched across the gap above like a tent. Are you hurt? He asked Charlotte, but she was already laughing. It sounded wild and delighted, like a woman surprised by life and surprising herself that she didn't mind it. All of a sudden, Alex found his heart fill with sincere affection. This woman drove him absolutely mad, both mentally and sexually, and yet he really did like her despite it. Perhaps even because of it. There was something so invigorating about her, and at the same time so reassuring. Certainly different from the woman who approached him with caution or used him for a thrill. Charlotte was neither afraid of him nor seeking mere titillation. She made him feel safe enough to be himself, not the dread pirate, the impious rake, just Alex, wanting her. God, wanting her so much he could not wait another moment. He'd only known her a few days, but his body swore it had suffered an eternity of desire for this woman. With a warm smile, he looked into her beautiful, lavish eyes. Hurry up, she demanded. His smile blazed into a grin. Well then, damn it if he had any choice left but to prove in one long, unrelenting movement exactly how a man used that most interesting part of him. Her thoughts shattered. She grasped mentally at wise pages, good quotes, but it was of no use. She could barely recall the name of any author, let alone something they might have written. Alex dominated her body and mind. She could feel nothing but him, think of nothing but him. Overwhelmed, she clutched the tumbled sheet in a kind of despair. It was too much. It was unbearable. Then he moved back, and she grabbed his hips, pulling her toward him again. Don't stop, she grumbled. He laughed. No fear of that. He began a gentle pace, inching deeper, all the while keeping his thumb occupied in a way that made Charlotte breathe jaggedly. He kissed her throat, as if trying to ease her airway. Are you doing all right, darling? Fine, she gasped. Does it hurt? No. Is conversation usually standard at this time? He laughed again. I beg your pardon, Charlotte. It was the first time he'd said her name, and she spun into bliss at the sound of it, wrapped warm and sensuous around his accent. Oh dear, this was proof. Her nerves were completely in disorder, and her toes might break from curling so hard. Not that she minded, considering how splendid it felt. My God, Alex breathed. The smile had gone from his face. He frowned as if deep in sacred contemplation. Charlotte had not realized he was such a devout man. Mind you, she felt rather prayerful herself at that moment. You're so sensitive, he whispered. Her stomach swooped. She'd heard those words over and over again throughout her childhood. Words that felt like a rap on the knuckles or a prod against the heart. You're so sensitive, Charlotte. You feel too much. You are too much. It's messy. A witch must be more restrained. She'd built 100 layers of calm and coolness over the years in response. She'd worked hard to become something other than her altogether wrong self. Now she shrank. Alex sensed it and paused, brushing the hair away from her face, lifting her chin so she had to look at him. His bright, fierce gaze pierced the shame. So responsive, he said, and the words sounded like a smile, like a bird in the singing winds. Charlotte frowned, not quite understanding, But he kissed her again, murmuring against her skin, and she finally comprehended that he was actually voicing approval. The realization jolted through her, shattering 1,000 blocks and barbs around her soul, filling her with pieces like hot glimmering stars. The emotional release felt as incredible as the physical one she had just experienced. Clinging to him, she was grateful and frustrated, all in one beautiful, messy tumult. He gave her such pleasure with his body, his words, even just the expression in his eyes. Blast it, the man was besting her. She wanted to make him feel the same way, more ecstatic, more electrified than her, but she didn't know how to achieve it. "You seem to be rather good at this," she said, trying a compliment. He smiled, a sweet, charmed smile, suggesting she had got it right. "Thank you, darling," he said, "but let's see if I can do it well enough that you're too breathless to tell me so." He lowered himself farther upon her, and all the sensations shifted, sparking anew. Charlotte gasped in astonishment. Alex's smile became an altogether wicked grin. She tried to speak, to query this new development, but instinct elbowed reason out of the way, rolled up its sleeves, and took charge. Wrapping her legs around the pirate, she lifted her hips to better meet him. The murmur in his throat encouraged her, so she moved again, and his rhythm quickened, and his breath too. She was pleasing him. This was excellent. There was only one problem. It was pleasing her all the more also. Electricity began building again within her body. Every muscle clenched in anticipation. She could not breathe just as he had planned, could not think. She moaned indecorously as the pirate filled her so deep, every proper word dissolved and tumbled right out of her. She clung to him even as he wrecked her. She inhaled his hot, ragged breath as her only hope for survival. It felt as devastating and exhilarating as being tossed from a roof high above the ground, which she knows about because she flies houses. Abruptly, the fire erupted, fiercer than before. Her very soul seemed to go up in flames. At the same moment, Alex's entire body clenched. Charlotte pulled him close, just as she had when they'd fallen through the rain. They began to shiver as they came down together into softness, heaviness, peace. His mouth kissed across her face, searching desperately for her mouth. She turned it toward him, and they met in a long, deep, mutual kiss. And closing her eyes, Charlotte felt for the first time in her life the experience of sharing a perfect moment with someone else. Oh.
Thanks, Jack.
Yeah, you're welcome.
How do you feel about the book now?
I don't think it's all about terrible magic, Ashton.
Vicious. So, on that note, it's time to rate the book. And we obviously have to rate it on flying houses. So, let's go with 7 flying houses. So, Jack, I'm going to ask you first.
Why'd you look at me as you said Jack?
I wanted you to know that I'm asking her first.
I think I got that when you said Jack, not Ash.
How many flying houses do you want to give this book, Jack, out of 7?
Out of 7, I'm going to say 3.
Okay, so that's less than 50.
Yeah. Quite a lot less than 50.
Percent. Sorry, let me finish that sentence.
Substantially.
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't really catch me too much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't really get it, I don't think. The pirates and the witches and...
It's very much like British comedy. Like
it is.
If you don't like British comedy, you don't like British comedy.
To that point, Ash, what are you rating this out of 7? As a book.
What would I rate it as? A fucking house?
I mean, an opinion.
Out of 7?
Out of 7.
Look, okay. As a book, I would probably rate it like a 6. Like, it was a good book. Like I said, if we had read it under any other circumstances, I would have liked this a lot more. I was severely disappointed by the lack of magic and, like, magical whimsy, I guess, that I was really looking for, particularly for, like, a fall read. Mm-hmm. This would have been more like like a springtime. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't give that vibe to me. So my judgment of it as a book, it's a good book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'll read the third one.
I don't know. I'm so on the fence about that, eh?
So I'll say 6. Because that's higher than 5, and I feel like I'm being fair. The writing is fantastic. It's very like there's nothing against that. It's just I don't know that it struck the vibe that I look for in a book.
Like a witchy book, specifically.
Like a witchy book specifically, not even close. Like if I was rating this based on whether or not it was a witchy book, I would give it a 2.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not rating based on whether or not it's a witchy book. So it was a good, like, if I read it under different circumstances, I would have thought differently.
Mm-hmm.
But it just didn't hit the mark for what I wanted. So I'd have to have different systems for rating this, I guess. It's like,
How am I feeling this week?
Yeah, right.
What I'll say, and to that point though, I chose this book like a month ago, and so like it is August now. A little peek behind the curtain. So like we're 2 months out from spooky times, and so it's like it did not cross my mind. I was like, I need a book about witches, and so I got a book about witches, and I love this book thoroughly. And I'm sure you know exactly why I love this book, because I love British humor.
Yeah.
I love like ironic kind of writing styles. Yep. I love the British approach to like proprietary of like you're saying the nicest, the way you're saying something is so nice, but it is like the most vile shit that you're saying. I fucking love that. And like people flying houses amuses me to no end. And so like all of those things wrapped up, I was like, this book is great. Let's read this book. And so it had never crossed my mind that I was like, on my list, I was like, I need a witchy book and the book about witches. It never crossed my mind that like, I should probably pick out like a nice fall, like Halloween vibe book. I was just like, I need a book about witches and this is what I got. And I did read like a couple other witchy books, but I'm like, they weren't doing it for me for various reasons. And
I'm like,
I was like smitten with this book. 100%.
And I'm like, I can be admittedly a bit of a mood reader. I did not have to slog to get through this.
Oh no, it's definitely a slog of a book.
It was just, it wasn't my mood at the time, and I am admittedly shifting more where the weather is changing a bit too. But like even now, it's like cooler out. I am shifting more into like pumpkin spice latte, fucking sweaters, and scarves kind of like feel. So I would,
like comfy.
Yeah. So I would want like. I would want something that feels more like supernatural witchy, I guess.
That's fair.
But yeah, I mean, it was a good book.
Cause like, to that point too, cause like, I mean, I'm like my rating, I'm giving this a 6 out of 7. Obviously, I fucking love this book. I adore it.
I'm surprised you didn't give it a 7.
Yeah, there was like a few odds and ends. Like, I wish it was a spicier romance novel, but like India Holton's like the amount of spice that's in it, given the content, given the themes and stuff, is like. It's not a spicy book. It's a book with spice. So under that, I can understand it. And it's also not like what Jack read was very subtle. I would say like it's so
more spice in this one than the first one though.
Yeah, for sure. The first one was like definitely not a spicy book. Like it was a nice romance. And it was a lovely story, and like and Indy is like, holy shit, what an amazing author. I want to read all of her shit now. It's so good. I love it.
So you are going to read the third one.
I'll probably end up reading the third one because like I'll go pick it up. Because you know me, I do that thing where I'm like, I want to go to the bookstore and buy a book. And then I get to the bookstore, I'm like, what book do I want? I don't even know what book I want. And then I'll see that and be like, that's the book I want. I'm going to read it.
I don't know that because
I
I've
need
never
to add
gone
it to my collection. Yeah, How
have I not gone to the bookstore with you?
I don't know. I just go like for funsies. Like I'll go take myself on a date and get a coffee and like go to the bookstore, and it's like a nice little cozy thing to do.
I know, but like of all the things that we've done together, we've never done the bookstore.
We've done a lot of stuff together.
Don't make it sound lewd.
I made it sound lewd. Yeah, so it was 6. I love this book.
Yay. What have you been reading lately?
Oh, I'm gonna talk about a book.
Do I know which book you're trying to talk about?
Okay. I so seldom do this, but I picked up a book. As the aforementioned, I just go to a bookstore and grab a book. I picked up
you bought this book?
I bought this book.
Oh, right, because your cat chewed on it.
I paid money on this book. And then...
I'm sorry for you.
So, it was called When Life Gives You Vampires. And it's written by Gloria Duke. And I should have known, because Gloria Duke has, like, a reputation of sorts.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. And okay, we're gonna have a compliment sandwich. The vampires in this book, excellent, wonderful. It's great. Like the vampire, like the structure the structure of the way the vampires work, their hierarchy of how they work, their covens and that kind of shit, and like their groupings, wonderful. I love that about this book.
Which admittedly is difficult for you because you were
Right.
super picky.
And
about
that's
your
why,
vampires.
like, I was so heartbroken about this book because compliment sandwich time. The fat phobia in this book is fucking for real, and it's supposed to be. It's
Fat
supposed
empowering?
to be it's supposed to be a body positive. It totes itself as a body positive book, and I'm just sorry, but Gloria Duke fell so fucking short on that one. And I'm just so horrendously disappointed because it had the vampires were great. The like male lead was wonderful. It's really well written, but like the main female character made me want to stab my fucking eyes out.
And we say this as
like plus size people.
Because
Yeah.
she was fat, you hated her so much?
no.
Oh,
Gosh,
rude.
no.
It's how the odds.
It's not. It's just, and then like her toxic relationship with her mother, and just like how they kind of resolved that, but really fucking didn't. And like, oh my god, it's just so. It felt like a book written from a perspective of somebody who's like not a plus size person, but they're like, I'm gonna write a plus size novel, and it just like was not. Just don't read it. So I'm gonna go on the limb and say, don't read this book.
It's funny because when you told me you picked that up, I was like, "Ooh, I wish you had told me that you were gonna read that because I would have told you not to."
But this is the thing, because I will go similar to you. I go in blind on a lot of books, especially ones I pick up at the bookstore where I'm like, this looks great. Read the back. I'm like, okay, cool. I can get behind this. And then I start reading it, and I'm about 20%, 30% into this book. I should have DNF'd it. I didn't. I finished it because I'm like, I'm going to stick this out and finish this book because I hate DNFing books. And I immediately finished it, and I closed it. My cat had chewed on it in the meantime, and I immediately put it in the donation box and got rid of it, which is like, for me, is a fucking thing. I don't get rid of books.
Well, and like, this is kind of how the podcast started too, right? When you picked out A Touch of Darkness, and you're like, "Hey, Ash, have you read this?" And I was like, "Yeah." I wasn't super keen on it. This is why. If you like this vibe, you should read this instead. And you were like, fuck, I'm just going to ask Ashton from now on what books I should read.
Exactly.
I'm going to start a blog and call it Shit Ashton Convinces Me to Read Podcast.
Yeah, here we are. But I mean, at the same time, like, I did that with this book, I did this with the League of Gentlewomen Witches. I just picked it up on a whim and I read it, and I'm like, God, this book's so good. I love this book, and it's so comfy and loving and cozy, and it's wonderful. And so, not all books are created equal when you pick them up.
Oddly
that's just it.
enough.
No, but like, and I've done that tons of times. There's tons of
Yeah.
books I obviously haven't talked about that I just like pick up and read, and then put on my trophy shelf because they're now my trophies. But
Trophy shelf.
yeah, this was the first book I ever came across, and I was like, oh, I'm so disappointed by this choice.
I just hate when there's like...
And it was, man, it was all of it was good except for like the fat phobic shit. I was so mad because like otherwise the book is great, and it was just like I can't get past that. So like, if you don't give a shit about fat phobia, read the book. But like, damn.
But it'd be like, you know, writing a book about a black FMC and then... like,
Not doing it justice at all.
well,
like,
and then
it's almost
litter-
worse.
littering it full of racism that is
Yeah.
like I mean, granted, I am not comparing being
unironically.
fat to being black at all,
Of
and like the
course.
things that we go through by any stretch of the imagination. But like, if you're not gonna,
And if you weren't black writing a book about black people
Don't
is
do
also
it.
just don't, because like that's not a thing you should do. It's you're like, those are lived experiences, and
Yeah.
so like it really honestly felt like this person didn't live that experience. And if they did, then I'm like, I'm so sorry if you had to live through this, because all of this is horrendous and the resolution of the book is not satisfying.
but even if you lived through it, you think you would want to write a better resolution.
Yeah, you would want to write a better version of that. And so
Yeah.
that's why I was like, God, I'm so disappointed. And so that was it. Anyway, so that is called When Life Gives You Vampires by Gloria Duke. I just don't read it. I'm sorry.
Now you know how I feel when I rate books.
I feel bad.
Did you read it, Ashton?
No, Ashton actually, after I started reading, she's like, I've heard some things about this book. And
I
I'm
came
like,
across
okay.
it on TikTok, and I was like, not reading that book.
Yeah. And I just, like I said, I just picked it up and started reading it because that's how I do. That's my rant. Ash, what are you reading?
Okay, well, because I read this and I was like, this isn't witchy. Rachel's giving the face. I went out of my way to find a witchy book to read.
Do you ever just feel like some people metaphorically slap you in the face? Do you ever feel that?
No, I just feel petty.
Go on.
She doesn't feel like people slap her. She feels like she slaps people.
And it's less of a slap and more of like hitting them in the face with my tit. So like, you know. I will say though, the book that I read to be a petty cunt, I'm not going to talk about. This book I'm going to talk about, I stumbled across and it was one of those like, oh, this is delightful. I guess I'm going to read that. And I didn't read I didn't read anything about it. So I had a feeling it was kind of witchy, but it was also had that like fall vibe that I wanted. Anyway, it's called Woods of the Raven by Mary Calms, I think. And it's Xander Corey, and he lives on his family property. It just kind of starts off with him. He does a thing every morning where he like checks out the land, but he's over top of the land, and so he's flying. So he's a raven. So he's like the steward, I guess, of his land. Like he's the one that like takes care of it. Mm-hmm. And he sees the town like police officer guy, the
constabulary,
the chief of police, coming up his drive, and he like back into himself, whatever. And he comes and he's like thinking about how much he's a new chief of police. He just moved here, and thinking about how much the chief of police doesn't like him because he's constantly giving him shit like, you're jaywalking, do it again and I'm gonna give you a ticket, or like.
So he likes him, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
he's got a crush on him.
Yeah. And so
he's mean to you because he likes you.
He's pulling on your pigtail.
Yeah. So
toxic masculinity.
More awkward than anything else. Like he's making excuses to talk to him, like, but he just doesn't know what to do.
It's still shitty.
It's super stupid.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he comes and he's like, so there's a girl who was killed on your land. He's like, she wasn't killed on my land. He's like, well, there's a dead girl found. And so they get invited into the house, and the other cop is like, hey, yeah, you know, Xander makes tea and blah, 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 blah. And like, he tells Lorne McBain, chief of police, that Xander's a witch. He's a kitchen witch or a green witch or hearth witch, however you want to call it. And he's like, yeah, okay, I understand. And Xander's like, all right, whatever, you don't have to believe me, whatever. But he does all like the things, and it wasn't even like super. It was supernaturally, but it wasn't like intensely supernaturally. Like the book that I read to be a cunt had very like thick Sabrina the Teenage Witch vibes. This one didn't have that, but it also had the things, but it didn't have the things. But he was like making like witch ladders and like talismans and stuff like that, and like the magic was kind of subtle, but then it was also really obvious because he was protecting a rift and stopping people from coming through the rift and like all of this stuff. And but then he like goes and he like cleanses. He helps them cleanse the McBain's house because Lauren moves with his brother and his niece because his brother's wife had just passed, and like all of these things, and he just kind of takes it with stride, and he's like, oh, okay, I guess this is real. And everybody's like these fae are coming and like trying to like bring their leader, and like there's all these like elements that just made me really happy. And like he has these dogs that wander around his land, and they're like not his dogs. They're these like, I'm not even gonna say the word right, so I'm not gonna even attempt it, but like the god that he's a branded witch, so he's been touched by a god, and so his like bones are branded by this god, so he gets his power from that instead of getting his power from the land.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
like,
I've watched Supernatural.
Is that a thing? Okay, I don't know. I don't remember. All I know is Jason Eccles.
Jensen
Eccles. See, I didn't even know that. And so the god that he serves is like a god of the hunt, and so these dogs are his dogs. And he gets attacked by these fey wolves. Like the guy, Xander, gets attacked by these fey wolves. And then these dogs come out of nowhere and destroy the fey wolves. And then he's got a black cat named Argos. And Argos is actually a demon. But he, like, lounges in front of... Like, it's that mythical whimsy, whatever. Anyway, and then, you know, they get pelvic. And that's really cute. And admittedly, oh, look, another queer romance that Ashton read. And
that's kind of your jam.
I know, and fell in love with. But it was like, it really had that like fall Sam Hain kind of like feel to it. And like I said,
How'd you pronounce that?
oh yeah, I fucked up. Sawen. It had that like,
Remember that time I went an entire episode and didn't pronounce it right?
yeah.
That was
And
rad.
then I gave her shit for it
Yeah,
afterwards.
call me out. What's up?
Yeah. So she just called me out. That's fine. It had that like Sawen kind of feel to it. And like people just accepted him, and like he read and admittedly like he read tarot cards, and there was all this stuff that like I was super into when I was younger, and so like there was that like I don't know. I thought it was really
sounds
cute.
comfy.
Yeah, and it was like it was very much that like I could have curled up with a pumpkin spice latte and a nice fuzzy blanket and like settled into like the witchy feel of it. But yeah, it was delightful. It was Woods of the Raven, and
Is it part of a series? Just one off?
I think it's just a one-off.
Okay.
And like she wraps it up really nicely at the end, and like it's just it's really cute how like Lauren protects him, and then like all this. Anyway, it was cute. Adorable.
Adorbsies.
Adorable.
Adorbs.
Anyway, Jack, what about you?
Ooh, I actually read a book.
Shut up.
I know.
Like an actual book?
Well, I listened to the audiobook.
That's
That's
fine.
fair.
That's
Okay.
Same thing.
That's what I do.
Yeah. Anyways.
I can't listen to audiobooks because they make me feel away. I get very like the audio. I just can't do it.
It was called Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone. And it's by Benjamin Stevenson.
Good old Benjamin.
Go Ben.
So I'm going to do a Rachel and like read a little bit of
perfect.
what it says.
Go for it.
Because that's fun. I'm Ernest Cunningham. Call me Ern or Ernie. I wish I'd killed whoever decided our family reunion should be at a ski resort, but it's a little more complicated than that. Have I killed someone? Yes, I have. Who was it? Let's get started. Everyone in my family has killed someone. My brother, my stepsister, my wife, my father, my mother, my sister-in-law, my uncle, my stepfather, my aunt, me. So, yeah, it's about this
I love how excited she got when she looked at me to be like, so.
murders. Ah!
You love murders.
Anyways, it's so fun.
We love Dick. She loves murders.
They go on this family reunion thing at a ski resort, and shit happens, and it's just a funny like way that it's written, where he's kind of like talking to you, like, you know, like you're kind of
Conversational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, like if you're just here for the murders, like there's a murder in chapter 3 and 7 and 11 and
So it's
22.
like fourth wall break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
The next book we're gonna talk about is very much like that.
he'll be like, oh yeah, so like once you're in one of the chapters, he's like, well, I told you it was going to be in this chapter,
Here
so
it is.
here we are.
Buckle up.
Yeah, so it's just
Nice.
funny like that. And
That's fun.
yeah, it's kind of like a whodunit, but kind of funny.
But everyone
and-
did it potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like, what the fuck?
That sounds like a
on?
really good game of Clue, where it's like everyone can definitely absolutely be the person who did it because they're all killers.
It actually says, I didn't read that part, but it said Knives Out and Clue
Yeah.
meet Agatha Christie and the Thursday
Knives Out
Murder
was
Club.
so good.
I have to. I don't watch movies anymore. I need to watch that one.
But yeah, definitely would recommend it.
That sounds great. Well, thanks, Jack. I appreciate that. So the next time we are back, we are talking about a sports ball book because it's going to be shortly after the World Series, and we decided that we're going to do a baseball book
Yeah.
called The Lineup by Megan Quinn, whom we love.
I fucking love Megan Quinn.
Megan Quinn is like a rom-com author through and through.
Yep.
And so like buckle up.
A goddess. Also, I will say, after reading a couple of her books, and I'll probably mention this in the next podcast too, but I'm just gonna mention it now. I joined up in her like Facebook group.
Oh, nice.
And I'm in a couple authors Facebook groups because that's all I use Facebook for is book groups. And she is like super interactive, like comments on people's stuff and like likes people's stuff. And like she's one of the admins, obviously. So like if she accepts your post, she likes it, right? Like And I find that so like endearing from an author to like, because it's not like she's like this indie author.
Yeah, she's like kind of a big deal.
She's got a massive catalog.
Huge catalog.
That's not even obvious that she would be an admin either. Like sometimes it's
Yeah, right?
fan run and
Yeah,
they
that's
don't really
fair.
have anything to do with
That's
it. So
fair.
Yeah.
And
that's
like
super cool.
Yeah, she's super. I find her to be like she's not like
Just down to earth.
crazy interactive.
Yeah.
Like you know, but like she comments on people's things. Or she posted the other day and she was like, "Guys, have I used this name yet in any of my books? Don't judge me." Like that kind of thing.
I
which
love that.
Yeah,
that's funny.
I really appreciated that.
It's like your close knit fan group. Like that's wonderful.
Yeah, I think it's and like I think it's lovely. I just it's nice to see.
Yeah.
So I have no problem like amping up her books.
Oh yeah,
because
Megan Quinn's wonderful. Like all of her books are
Rom-com-y.
fabulous. Yeah, they're very well. The rom com. So like, yeah, they're all like.
Except the duets, that was not a rom com, and that made me cry so fucking hard.
I didn't read that one yet. So
No, but that's what I talked about a couple.
Oh, okay.
What did we cover of hers already?
Nothing. I don't think.
Nope. This is the first Megan Quinn book.
Oh.
Specific because and specifically, I wanted to cover Megan Quinn book, which we will talk about next time. Because she's such like a prolific author in the kind of the romance sphere. So.
I've talked about her books. I talked about those 3 little words and the duets.
Yeah. So but we will talk more about her next time. And thanks for joining me, guys, and sticking up for the magic. Ash. I appreciate that. So we'll have a good one, guys. Bye.
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 Thanks for listening to the Queens of Spice podcast. You'll find us on Instagram and Twitter at Queens of Spice. Or if you want to send us an email, you can reach us at queensofspice@gmail.com.